Inside, he found the husband lying dead, a container of antifreeze and a glass half full of bright green liquid nearby. Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you are doing well. My name is Gabby and today we will be diving into the case of Stacey Castor. At 2 p.m. on the 22nd of August 2005, the Onondaga County Sheriff's Department received a frantic phone call from a woman claiming that her husband hadn't emerged from their bedroom or responded to his cell phone since he'd locked himself in following an argument the previous day. She said that he was suffering from depression and that she was afraid that he'd done something to hurt himself. Unable to get a response from inside the bedroom, Sergeant Robert Willoughby forced the door open. Inside, he found the husband lying dead, a container of antifreeze and a glass half full of bright green liquid nearby. The dead man's wife appeared distraught, screaming, "He's not dead, he's not dead." The dead man's name was David Castor. His wife was Stacey Castor, formerly Stacey Wallace. What at first seemed like a clear-cut case of suicide by ingestion of antifreeze would soon prove to be something else altogether. Stacey Castor was born Stacey Daniels on the 24th of July 1967 in Clay, New York State. In 1985, when she was 17, she met the man who would become her first husband, Michael Wallace. According to Stacey, it was love at first sight. The couple married on the 7th of April 1990 and their first daughter Ashley was born later that year. A second daughter, Bree, followed in 1991. However, the domestic bliss didn't last. Despite both working, Stacey for an ambulance dispatch company and Michael working nights as a mechanic, the family had little money, and while they remained close to their children, the couple grew apart. Stacey complaining that Michael drank too much, and both being rumoured to have affairs. Then in the winter of 1999, Michael started feeling ill. Family members recall him being unsteady, coughing and seeming swollen. As his daughter Ashley later described, he was having a hard time walking, he was having a hard time talking. One time he sat up and just vomited across the coffee table and laid back down and went back to sleep like nothing even happened. Seeking medical treatment for his mystery illness, Michael told doctors that even though he hadn't been drinking, he felt drunk all the time. Whatever his illness was, it didn't respond to any of the attempts of treatment by the doctors. Michael's condition continued to worsen, and on the 11th of January 2000 he died at home aged 38. Ashley, who was 12 at the time, was alone with him when he died and blamed herself for not doing more to prevent it. Michael's death was attributed to a heart attack, an explanation that his sister was skeptical of. She tried to request an autopsy, but Stacey refused to allow it. The newly widowed Stacey quickly moved on with her life, collecting the $55,000 payout from Michael's life insurance policy. A year after her first husband's death, she met David Castor and married him in 2003. David owned an air conditioning installation and repair company, while Stacey worked as his office manager. Everything seemed to be fine until the phone call to the local sheriff's office on the afternoon of the 22nd of August 2005. While David's death initially appeared to be a case of suicide, upon closer investigation, things that suggested otherwise soon started to add up. David's will had been changed, cutting out his son from his previous marriage and leaving his entire $300,000 estate to Stacey. Her claims that David had been depressed since the death of his father were contradicted by his ex-wife, who was adamant that he'd never kill himself. And the glass containing the antifreeze that was found with David's body had Stacey's fingerprints on it, and a turkey baster found in the kitchen rubbish bin was discovered to contain traces of antifreeze and had David's DNA on the tip. Investigating the matter further, detectives ordered wiretappings on the Castor house and set up cameras overlooking the house and the graves of Stacey's dead husbands. The reasoning was that if Stacey had genuinely loved her husbands, she would visit them, and they could observe her behaviour when she did. However, Stacey didn't visit the graves, not even once. Eventually, after learning of the death of Stacey's first husband, lead investigator Detective Dominic Spinelli requested that Michael Wallace's body be exhumed. A toxicology screening revealed that he'd been suffering from severe antifreeze poisoning when he died, which was most likely the cause of it. Shortly after, investigators decided to ask Stacey Castor some pointed questions. Detective Valerie Brogan later recalled that Stacey seemed nervous, she was pacing, and she was surprised that the detectives were there. The detectives went through several questions with Stacey, then Detective Spinelli asked a seemingly innocuous one. Of the 2 glasses on David's bedside table, which glass had Stacey poured cranberry juice in? Stacey replied, "Well, when I poured the cranberry juice." She then stopped the interview, accusing the detectives of trying to set her up. Afterwards, the detectives visited Ashley at her university to tell her that her father had been poisoned. When they left, an upset Ashley phoned her mother, who later invited Ashley to come to the family home for drinks, saying that she needed to relax. She had never done so previously. Ashley agreed because Stacey was both her mother and her best friend. After the drinks, Ashley suddenly felt tired and had to go to bed. The following day, Stacey invited Ashley for drinks again, this time giving her a nasty tasting drink that Ashley initially refused. However, Stacey insisted, giving Ashley a straw and telling her to put it at the back of her throat. Ashley complied because Stacey was her mother and she trusted her. After drinking it again, she felt tired and went for a lie down. However, this time she didn't wake up. Instead, she was found comatose on her bed by her sister, Bree, 17 hours later, who demanded that they call an ambulance. Stacey was the one who made the 911 call. When Bree left her sister's side for a moment, she found when she returned a typed and printed suicide note confessing to the murders of her father and stepfather beside Ashley, which Stacey quickly took and gave to the paramedics. At the hospital, tests found a potentially fatal dose of painkillers in Ashley's system, large enough that had she got medical attention even just a few minutes later, it is likely that she would have died. When Ashley eventually woke up, she found a grim-faced police detective by her bedside. Upon being questioned about the murders and the suicide note, she said that the last thing she remembered was her mother making her an alcoholic drink and that she didn't write the note. She was visibly confused about their questions and their accusations. Given the weight of the accumulated evidence against Stacey Castor, the police finally arrested her for second-degree murder of David Castor and for attempting to murder Ashley and frame her for the murder of David and Michael. A search of Stacey's computer revealed multiple drafts of the supposed suicide note with timestamps that proved that they had been written while Ashley was in class. Additionally, Ashley's fingerprints weren't on the keyboard, only Stacey's. And finally, typing sounds were audible on the wiretap recording from the relevant day and time where Stacey was on the phone with her friend. At the trial, the prosecution argued that David's suicide had never made sense given the absence of his fingerprints on the glass or container of antifreeze and the turkey baster with his DNA on it. Given the progression of David's illness, they concluded that he'd been force-fed antifreeze via the turkey baster for 4 days before his wife staged things to make it look like a suicide. Additionally, calcium oxalate crystals were found in the kidneys of both David Castor and Michael Wallace, which is a strong indicator of antifreeze. With regards to motive, they concluded that it had been money in the form of life insurance payouts and the estates of the dead men that Stacey wanted. With regards to Ashley's supposed suicide note and confession, they pointed out that she had only been 12 at the time of her father's death and put her on the stand where she testified that she hadn't killed anyone or written a note. The prosecution concluded that the note had been written by Stacey, citing the drafts on Stacey's computer that had been written while Ashley was at university and the absence of anyone's fingerprints other than Stacey's on the keyboard. Additionally, the word antifreeze was written anti-free on 4 occasions within the note, with Stacey having called the substance anti-free in an interview with the police. The defence's strategy was to try to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury by poking holes in Ashley's version of what happened and proving that she could have been capable of murder as a pre-teen. They gave jealousy as a possible motive for her father's murder, noting that her father had favoured her sister over her. As for David Castor's death, they noted that Ashley and her stepfather hadn't gotten on. They also presented a pharmaceutical expert who testified that after analysing a blood sample that had been drawn from Ashley when she'd arrived at hospital, they concluded that she'd ingested the tablets several hours prior rather than the 17 hours claimed by Ashley and the prosecution. In a final attempt to sway the jury, they put Stacey Castor on the stand. During cross-examination, the Onondaga County DA, William Fitzpatrick, pointed out flaws in Stacey's version of events. As Stacey had implied during her testimony that Ashley had committed the murders due to being mentally ill, Fitzpatrick pointed out that she'd never sought therapy for her daughter and that at the age of 21, Ashley exhibited no signs of mental illness. He also pointed out that Stacey's behaviour during David and Ashley's respective illnesses made no sense, especially given her years of working for a paramedics company. She had indicated that David had looked okay when he'd been staggering, vomiting and unable to stand and hadn't sought medical attention for Ashley for 17 hours. Fitzpatrick questioned why a woman who'd lost 2 husbands wouldn't seek help for a daughter in the condition that Ashley had been found in. He shouted frequently at Stacey, causing her defence attorney to just as frequently object and eventually request a mistrial. The trial ended on the 5th of February 2009 in a jam-packed courtroom. Stacey Castor was found guilty of second-degree murder in the poisoning of David and the attempted second-degree murder of Ashley. Stacey had her eyes closed when the verdicts were read out, and her attorney said that she was going to appeal. At Stacey's sentencing a month later, Chief Assistant DA Christine Garvey asked the judge to impose the maximum consecutive sentences given the brutality of David's death. Additionally, she criticised how Stacey had partied in her backyard with friends like nothing was happening as Ashley lay comatose in her room. She is cold, calculating and without any emotion for what she has done, she stated. Human life is sacred. Stacey Castor places no value on human life, not even her own flesh and blood. To Stacey Castor, human beings are disposable. Stacey was sentenced to the maximum of 25 years to life for the murder of David Castor, 25 years for the attempted murder of Ashley, and 1.25 to 4 years for the forging of David's will. Under the New York State sentencing guidelines, that meant that she'd have to serve a minimum of just over 51 years before being eligible for parole. Even with credit for time served, her earliest possible release date would be the 15th of June 2055, slightly over a month before her 88th birthday. Given the notoriety of the case, it got more than the usual amount of attention from the media. On the 24th of April 2009, ABC aired a 2-hour special on Stacey Castor and the trial. When interviewed for the special, Stacey had maintained her innocence and said that Ashley brought this on. ABC also interviewed a forensic psychiatrist for his perspective on the case. He said that most genuine suicide notes focus on themes of remorse or being able to go on. In contrast to the notes supposedly written by Ashley, focused on taking blame off Stacey, featuring such lines as, "No one was supposed to know, but now they do, and they think you did it, but you didn't, it was me," and repeating the same theme no less than 14 times. The forensic psychiatrist also said that he believes that Stacey will never admit to what she did, since the code of murderers like her is to deny, deny, deny until the bitter end. In addition to the murders of her husbands and attempting to murder her own daughter, it is suspected by the DA and Michael Wallace's family that Stacey may had killed her own father, Jerry Daniels. He went into hospital in February 2002 for a minor lung problem and died shortly after his daughter brought him an open can of soda while visiting him. She was the executor of his estate. On the morning of the 11th of June 2016, Stacey was found dead in her cell at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women. There were no indications of suicide or foul play, and it was later determined that she had died of a heart attack. The Black Widow was no more. That was the case of Stacey Castor, a very evil and cold woman who had absolutely no regard for human life. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you feel like subscribing to the channel, please do. It will be very much appreciated. But until I see you again, please be safe, be well, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.